The grand piano on the 42nd floor was a slab of polished obsidian, a monument to a wealth Leo had only ever cleaned. He ran a dust cloth, soft and unimposing, over its closed lid, his movements economical, practiced. From his janitorial cart, the faint, tinny sound of a cartoon theme song leaked from his phone, a reminder of the world waiting for him, a small, cluttered apartment and his 7-year-old daughter, Chloe, who believed her father held the moon in his calloused hands. The annual Ethelred Industries Gala swirled around the instrument, a kaleidoscope of silk, champagne flutes, and the low, confident hum of money. Leo was a ghost in this world, his dark uniform blending into the shadows, his presence noted only when a stray canapé toothpick needed retrieving. "Hey, you. The cleaner." The voice was loud, brash, laced with the particular brand of condescension that came from a 7-figure bonus. Leo turned. It was Carson, a junior VP with a reputation for cruel humor and a desperate need for the CEO's approval. "Yes, sir?" Leo's voice was quiet, a neutral tone he'd perfected. Carson grinned, flanked by his sycophants. "You know your way around a keyboard, right? I mean the kind that types scrub the floors?" A ripple of laughter. "How about you give us a tune? Show us what the help does for fun." A hot flush crept up Leo's neck. He could feel dozens of eyes turning towards him, a mix of curiosity and amusement. He sought an escape route, a mop bucket to empty, a scuff mark to vanish into. I don't play, sir," he lied, the words ash in his mouth. "Nonsense," Carson boomed, clapping a heavy hand on Leo's shoulder. "Everyone can play chopsticks, come on. For the team, Mr. Thorne loves a bit of culture." He gestured flamboyantly towards the CEO, Alistair Thorne, a stern, silver-haired man holding a crystal tumbler of whiskey by the floor-to-ceiling window, observing the scene with an unreadable expression. This was it. The ultimate humiliation. He would fumble, they would laugh, and the story would follow him, a new stain he couldn't scrub away. He thought of Chloe's drawing taped to his locker, a stick figure with a big smile pushing a broom next to a grand piano. My daddy, the best. He couldn't be the punchline, not with her picture in his pocket. His feet, heavy as concrete, carried him to the bench. The crowd tittered, phones were raised, ready to capture the spectacle. He saw his reflection in the pristine black lid, a pale, tired man in a janitor's uniform surrounded by giants. He sat. The leather of the bench sighed. He slowly, deliberately lifted the fallboard, revealing the ivory keys. They were cool, familiar, a landscape of memory and pain he had sworn never to traverse again. He placed his hands in his lap, staring at them. These were the hands that scrubbed toilets, that fixed broken dolls, that wiped away childhood tears. They were also the hands that had once held the promise of a different life. He took a deep, shuddering breath that nobody heard over the expectant murmur. Then he placed his fingers on the keys, and the world changed. It did not start with the hesitant plinking of chopsticks. It began with a single resonant bass note that hung in the air like a confession, then another. A complex, melancholic chord progression unfolded, a haunting melody weaving through it like a ghost in the architecture of the sound. It was Rachmaninoff. His Piano Concerto No. 2. Not the simplified version, but the full, thunderous, heart-shattering orchestral part, conjured solely by 10 fingers on a single piano. The room, which had been a cocktail party, became a cathedral. The mocking smiles vanished. Carson's jaw went slack. The whispered conversations died mid-sentence. The music was a physical force, filling the vast space, each note a story of loss, of love, of a dream so bright its extinguishing had left permanent scars. Leo's body swayed with the rhythm of the piece, his eyes closed, his face a mask of profound sorrow and even more profound love. He was no longer Leo the janitor. He was a vessel for a beautiful, broken memory. He was playing Alara's song. In his mind, he was no longer on the 42nd floor. He was in a sun-drenched conservatory, a young man with ink-stained fingers and a future blazing before him. Ilara was there, her laugh the most beautiful melody he'd ever heard, her cello resting against her shoulder as they played this very piece together. Their piece. She was his muse, his partner, his everything. The music swelled, capturing the dizzying joy of their love, the frantic, beautiful race towards a shared dream. Then, the music shifted. The melody became fragile, desperate. A single repeating high note like a hospital monitor's steady, accusing beep. The chords underneath turned dissonant, aching. This was the part of the story words could never tell. The diagnosis, the frantic hope, the slow agonizing fade. He played the sound of a future dissolving, of holding a hand that grew colder with each passing measure, of promises made in a sterile white room. A tear escaped his closed eyelids, tracing a clean path through the fine layer of dust on his cheek. He didn't wipe it away. Across the room, Alistair Thorne, the formidable CEO known for his ice-water composure, stood perfectly still. The whiskey in his glass was forgotten. He was not seeing the janitor. He was hearing a soul laid bare. The music spoke of a specific, devastating love, a loss so profound it had reshaped a man's entire life. It mirrored a hollow space in his own heart, a loss he kept locked away in the deepest vault of his being. Without his permission, a single hot tear welled in the corner of his eye and spilled over, tracing a path down his weathered cheek. He did not wipe it away. The final notes were not loud, but they were immense. A gentle, resigned descent, a letting go. The last note faded into a silence so absolute it felt sacred. Leo slowly lowered his hands, the spell broken. He was just a janitor again, sitting at a piano in a silent room of stunned billionaires. He stood, the legs of the bench scraping softly against the marble floor. The sound was deafening. He didn't look at anyone. He simply walked back to his cart, picked up his cloth, and began wiping down the gleaming surface of a nearby table, his movements once again those of a ghost. The crowd remained frozen, a collective breath held. No one clapped. Applause would have been a desecration. The silence followed Leo like a phantom as he pushed his cart into the service elevator. The doors slid shut, cutting off the frozen tableau of the gala, and the spell was broken. In the sterile, fluorescent hum of the descending car, the weight of what he had done crashed down on him. He had broken his own most sacred rule, never look back. He had opened the vault where he kept Ilara, and the ghost had escaped, stunning a room full of strangers. Shame warred with a strange, cathartic relief. He felt naked. Back in the janitor's closet, the small, windowless room that smelled of bleach and lemon-scented polish, he leaned against the wire shelving, his hands trembling. He pulled out his phone. The screen was a picture of Chloe, her gap-toothed smile a beacon of pure, undiluted joy. This was why he did it. This was his symphony now. The memory of Ilara was a private lullaby, not a public performance. He had betrayed her, and himself, for a moment of pride. A sharp knock on the door jamb made him jump. It was Mrs. Higgins, the severe head of HR, her face unreadable. "Leo, Mr. Thorne would like to see you. In his office. Now!" Dread, cold and sharp, coiled in his stomach. This was it. He had overstepped, disrupted the corporate harmony. He was going to be fired. He thought of the rent, of Chloe's asthma medication, of the way her face crumpled when she was worried. Please, no. The walk to the CEO's office on the top floor was a march to the gallows. The carpet was thicker here, swallowing all sound. Mrs. Higgins opened a pair of double mahogany doors and gestured him inside. Alistair Thorne's office was not what he expected. It was spacious, yes, with a breathtaking view of the city's glittering skyline, but it was not ostentatious. It was serene. And on the far wall, surrounded by books and a few tasteful artifacts, was a single, large, black-and-white photograph. It was of a young woman with a cello, her head thrown back in laughter, her eyes alight with a fierce, intelligent joy. Leo's breath hitched. It was Ilara. Thorne was standing by the window, his back to the door. He didn't turn immediately. "Sit, please, Leo," he said, his voice low and gravelly, stripped of its usual boardroom authority. Leo sat gingerly on the edge of a plush leather chair, his eyes glued to the photograph, Thorne finally turned. His eyes were red-rimmed. He looked older, stripped bare. He followed Leo's gaze to the picture. Her name was Ilara, Thorne said, the name a prayer on his lips. He walked slowly to his desk, picking up a small framed photo that Leo hadn't noticed. He handed it to Leo. It was a younger Thorne, his arm wrapped around the same young woman from the wall. They were both in formal wear, standing backstage at a concert hall. The love between them was palpable. "My daughter," Thorne said, his voice cracking on the word. The world tilted on its axis. Leo's mind raced, connecting impossible dots. Ilara had never spoken much of her family. She'd said they were traditional and hadn't approved of her musical ambitions or of him, a scholarship student with no name and no prospects. She had chosen her art and him over their world. They had eloped. He had assumed her parents were merely distant, disapproving figures. He never knew. He never imagined. "She was the most brilliant light in this world," Thorne continued, his gaze distant. "So stubborn. So fiercely in love with her music. And with a boy. A pianist of staggering talent, she told me. She said he understood music, and her, in a way, I never could." He looked directly at Leo, his eyes swimming with a bottomless ocean of regret. "I was a fool. I forbade it." I told her it was a dead-end life, I said. I said if she walked out that door with him, she was no daughter of mine. The words hung in the air, each one a shard of glass, reconstructing a history Leo never knew. "She left," Thorne whispered. "And my pride? My damned stupid pride. I never reached out. I followed her career from a distance in secret. I knew she was playing with the Philharmonic. I knew she had married." His eyes met Leo's, a devastating understanding passing between them. "And I knew through a private investigator I hired in my cowardice when she fell ill." Leo could barely breathe. The man who had fired 1,000 employees, the titan of industry, was crumbling before him, confessing his greatest sin. "The investigator's final report," Thorne said, his voice a raw whisper. It said she was happy. That her husband, a janitor now, was a good man, a devoted father. It included a picture of a little girl, my granddaughter. He walked around the desk and stood before Leo, not as a CEO to an employee, but as a broken man to another. "The music you played tonight, that was your arrangement. The one you and Ilara wrote together for the two of you. She sent me a recording of you both playing it, just once, a year after she left. I've listened to it every day since she passed." He placed a trembling hand on Leo's shoulder. "I didn't just hear a beautiful piece tonight, son. I heard my daughter's heart. I heard your love for her. And I heard the life I stole from us all." Leo looked up at the man, his enemy, his father-in-law, a stranger bound to him by the most profound love and the most profound loss. The hatred he thought he might feel had no room to grow. It was suffocated by the sheer, overwhelming weight of shared grief. "Her name is Chloe," Leo said, his own voice thick with tears. "She has her mother's laugh." Alistair Thorne's composure finally broke. A sob, raw and ragged, escaped him. He pulled Leo into a clumsy, desperate embrace. Two shattered men holding each other up over the grave of the woman they both loved. "I have wasted so many years," Thorne wept into Leo's shoulder. Is there any way? Could I ever?" Leo, stunned, his own tears falling freely, simply held on. The twist of fate was too immense, too heartbreakingly perfect. The CEO who had torn them apart was now, a decade too late, begging for a piece of the world his daughter had built. The janitor held the key not to a cleaning closet, but to a grandfather's redemption. And in that silent, tear-soaked office under the watchful, laughing eyes of the girl in the photograph, a new, fragile melody began, born from the heartbreaking ruins of the old.